Alright, so the back suspension is together. We completely stripped it out, refinished it. Looks beautiful now. Brakes in silver like I told you about. I really like that. This is period correct. This is what I used back in the late 90s and 2000s, and a drawing of what this should look like. Think of it this way, with a hole going through it, and then the outer part of that link is kind of like this, and then obviously it bolts to the lower control arm. This here is rubber with a hole going through it. It should have a steel sleeve. Imagine just like a tube like this. So it kind of looks like this. Imagine the sway bar is on this outer portion here, and then the end link is gripping this inside tube. So as you tighten that, it tightens on the tube and it can still move. Problem is the other one didn't come with that tube. Someone put a bolt through and tightened it. It tightened on the rubber, so it just pulled the rubber apart. So it looks like this. This is off an airbox of an S2000, but same kind of idea. The bolt grips this. It doesn't bottom out on that tube and distort the tube. This is the first Griptec pulley that we have for the Jackson Supercharger, so it looks a little different. Obviously, the shape and the sizing, the back spacing is exactly the same. It's been boxed and shadow tested. Well, this is the conventional pulley. One of the problems that we had with these, and one of the engineers at Griptec used to work with Magnuson, so he's very familiar with these. This used to get kind of wallowed out, and this pulley would start to do this, and the more it did it, the more damage to the snout of the Supercharger. And of course, belt problems. If this is spinning, even a little small deflection will cause belt issues. The belt doesn't want to be moving. It wants to be as true as possible. So they address this by, this is a little bit more money than the conventional, but it's a stainless steel hub. A lot more, it's obviously harder, it's stronger than the aluminum, and then the pulley bolts on the same way. It's bolted on here. You know, this can be changed. You can change the size, but we're gonna configure this to be the perfect size for efficiency and longevity. It has the, of course, the Griptec unique machining and coating on here. I mean, this is, you can hear this. I mean, it's like sandpaper. It's fantastic. What that means is you're gonna get better belt traction without as much belt tension. Think of this, and the belt is on here, putting a massive amount of side load here, then spinning it. We've actually seen Superchargers, the shaft break. In fact, we've actually broke them and sent them back to Magnuson, which is obviously where we've come up with the knowledge of the pulleys and why we're doing this. This is the first one that's come in. The next one, it should be here in about a week, is the stepper pulley. It's the one that goes on the alternator, and it drives from the crank to the alternator, from the alternator to the blower, which is attaches to this. That's the double pulley, and it's going to have two different sizes. And again, this is proprietary for LHT. This is the very first one, but we're going to be super excited. You're going to see our logo on here because this is a project we're working with. You'll be able to order these directly from us. I'm going to try and put kits together where you get both pulleys and the correct belt. Alright guys, thank you so much for the kind words on episode 3. If you didn't see that, I didn't mean to turn it into a sad video, but thank you for the kind words, really. It's such a big thing when the car guys come together. I swear, it's the best community of guys I think I've ever met. Some of my best friends are from cars. I mean, it's such a tight community. And again, thank you so much. Let's get back to the video. So the bushing just came in, the one I was talking about for the sway bar. And remember I talked about it not having a steel tube in there. Well, you can't buy the tube. And obviously, if you put the bolt in here, it's loose, and if you squish it down with the end link, it's just going to trash this bushing like it did the first time. So I couldn't find the tube, but you remember I showed you this as kind of like a demonstration earlier. This is that little piece that went through the airbox on the S2000. Well, it fits in there perfect. You just got to drill that out to 8mm, which is the size of the bolt right here. So that is a good solution because you can't find that tube. So airbox on an S2000. So I'll put this one together, and you see now it moves nice and smooth, but it's not loose, it's not going to rattle, it's not going to trash that bushing. All of this clamping is on that tube, like I kind of explained in that little cheesy drawing, but this is basically going to sit in there, and it's almost a perfect size. You push all the way through, and you see that comes right to the edge there. Perfect. So that's now nice and smooth. The sway bar is going to do its job without making all that squeaking and groaning. This is from Jordan Distributors Inc. So backstory, George got a push to start conversion for his white Civic, his daily, and I put a video on Instagram. And I said, that is really cool. Well, this guy reached out to us and said, hey, would you like a kit for the hatch? I'd like you to promote it. I'd like you to see what you think. And I want to show you basically what you get in the kit. There's two separate systems here. This is the push to start. So this isn't like the S2000 where you need to turn the key on and then you have a push button. That was kind of like a conversion we used to do back in the day, because the push button, all you would do is intercept the start function, which is that spring-loaded part of the ignition. This is a complete system. It replaces that whole ignition switch, and it has its own encoder, which means you need to have a chip for it to work, kind of like a key on a modern car. Well, this is the push to start. This is one of the buttons he has here. I like this one. It looks very, very OEM. It's designed to fit where your ignition switch would go. Well, he also sent us two other switches here to see which one we wanted. He has this on his site. I'll show you these individually. And then this is essentially the chip. You put it on your keyring, or you can glue one of these to the back of your phone right here. But this box is hidden in the car. This has to mate with that. You'll hear a beep. It kind of does a handshake. Then it allows the car to start. So it's got some anti-theft function in there. I mean, this looks nice quality. It's plug and play, so you're not going to hack into your wiring. Well, not only did he send us that, he sent us this guy right here that he calls the Ghost Box. If you remember, our hatch, it didn't have a faceplate on the radio, and I'm not a big stereo guy. I don't want amplifiers and stuff in there, so this is kind of perfect for me. This is a Ghost Box, cleverly named. It basically hides behind the dash, and then it plugs into, with this is a plug and play harness for your Honda. I mean, it couldn't get any easier. You're gonna plug this in here, it plugs into your radio. This is essentially gonna be a radio, but it's Bluetooth, hooks to your phone. So if you have an FM modulator on your phone, there's your radio, or you play music directly from your phone, which is kind of the way all new cars are. A couple of other things they sent, a big thank you. These are hood props. I think the one is missing on the hatch. He must be paying attention to our videos, so Jordan, thank you so much. This is much, much appreciated. You guys with the EK, if you've ever had the issue where you pull the hood prop and the plastic thing breaks off, it kind of looks like this, and the problem is people try and bend it like this to open the hood, and it's not. I always try and tell people, put your fingers behind it and pull it. Well, if you do break it off, he offers this little guy right here, and it's got the two Allens in the side. You're gonna put that over your broken part, and now you got a new replacement. In an upcoming video, we will show you the install of this. Jordan, thank you so much. Check these guys out on Instagram. Alright, so next step is remove the intake manifold and some of the parts to get ready for the Supercharger install. Now I'm going to show you the important parts to look for. There's a calculation and basically an important part for this bracketry system here. It's imperative. It is absolutely correct. If not, you're going to have belt alignment issues. Alright, so of course cover your ports. This is the knock sensor. These, if you've never dealt with these before, these are waiting to break. Its whole life existence is to try and break. Rocket. And again, this is so fragile. This is the crossover pipe here. You see there is a little locating tab here to keep this in position. This is going to rotate down. So to make that happen, that little tab there, you're going to have to break that tab off, and this will rotate on the rubber. See how much this has moved from this location? It was touching the top, now it's down here. Again, hammer and screwdriver, pop that little tab there. It comes off super easy. You see how much this has dropped down? This kind of gives you an idea of what I did. I put the two outlets on this side. These are the two hoses that fit without any issue. This just has a little bit of clearance on the oil filter. If we put a bigger oil filter on it, it's going to sit on that pipe. This is the first part we're going to install. This is the lower bracket that replaces this bracket right here. Obviously, see, it has a pulley on there and the adjuster. This adjusts the tension between the crank pulley and then the alternator pulley. So bracket installed, looks just like this. There is room for this bolt here. It is a little tight. A lot of people used to leave that out because it was kind of a pain to get to. Of course, there is room around it. You can get a wrench in there to tighten that. This is the upper tensioner right here. This bracket here is adjustable. So it fits the B16 and the B18 blocks because there is a height difference. Now this tab right here is what the alternator is going to pick up, and then important are these two thicker washers. They're like a hardened washer and two nuts. And these studs here, notice there is a longer stud and a shorter one. Alright, so this is going to go in. You're going to remove the washers in the bracket. This is going to put in flush here. This is the way this bracket goes. As you see, this is going to slide for the different height block. Now this is the way around it should go. You're going to put the little bolt that is a 14mm head. That bolt is going to go here, and these studs are going to protrude through this bracket just like this. No washers on at this stage. This is what it should look like. This tab is going to come into play. It is actually going to go on the longest tab, and it's going to point forward. Now there is going to be the washers that you're installing here. I'm going to show you how to check it first, but right now we're going to put one of our 8mm nuts on here. Now I'll call it an 8mm nut. It's a 12mm head. Now we're not going to crank it down. We're just going to kind of give it a bit of a snug. Same with this. Snug everything. Use the open end. Little at a time. We just want to make sure there's no binding. Make sure everything sits exactly perfect. This is very crucial to the belt alignment right here. So this is the alternator, how it sits. You see how it actually rolls forward. Now this, we're going to tighten this. You see the alternator right now, it has a bit of shimmy to it. When we tighten this, it's going to slide that sleeve and butt up to the alternator. So we're not going to make it absolutely solid, but we want it where it's starting to touch the alternator and the alternator is stiff to move. I'm doing this one-handed, but basically you just tighten this a little at a time. Make sure you can still move this where it'll kind of sit. See right now, I'll just back it off just a hair, and we're doing this to align the alternator. So see, it'll move. Now this gap here, I'm going to try and get this angle. This surface here, if you can see that, that is what holds the front of that alternator. Now these are the spacers right here. If you don't get these spacers right, you're going to actually pull the alternator this way or this way. This has to be perfectly straight. Tighten it a little at a time. Make sure there's no gaps here. Nothing's under tension. And again, I know I'm going on a little bit here, but I used to install these things back in the mid-90s, and I redid so many kits that people put on wrong. It used to throw belts. As soon as you hit 8,000 RPMs, the belt flies off. And this is one of these common issues. I used to take all this bracketry off, put it back together, boom, it wouldn't have an issue. That alternator, you see that gap is perfect. So you're going to snug this a little at a time, and you want to make sure that there's just a little bit of a drag on there. If it's too thick of a washer, this bracket will be pushed over too much. Too thin of a washer, as you tighten this, it's going to lock on here. You won't be able to move the alternator. You won't be able to move that bracket. Supercharger is installed, just temporary. I wanted to just kind of give you an idea. I left the S-tube off so you can see what kind of room we have. Everything's kind of tight, but by moving everything, you see the hose there, you see how close we are. That's why you gotta move it. I mean, you have a bit more room than you need, but a lot of it is for when you install it. The more room you have, the better the install, because typically you drop the supercharger in, you lay it down, you bolt the manifold on, and then you pull the supercharger up to the manifold. So the more room you have down here, more access you've got to these lower bolts when you're tightening the manifold. Trust me, you need all the room you can get. This tab here, very important, this tab is going to join to this bolt I showed you earlier with a straight bar. I have the dimensions of it. Many kits don't come with it. People lose them. It's a pain in the rear to install, so people throw them away thinking that they don't need it. Well, the amount of weight hanging off here, manifolds coming cracked. Almost every manifold we get, I would say one in 3 manifolds come cracked, and it's because you don't run the support bar. All that weight on here, vibration, heat, stress, breaks the manifold. 11 1/4 long. We are 1 inch wide, and I'm going to say it's a 1/4 inch thick. 1/4 inch thick. So has the slotted hole here. Depends if you run the B16 or the B18. Now, if you're going to make this, if you bolt this to your bracket, run this up here, you can mark the hole here. You can leave it a little bit long. Now, the key here is these are offset like that bracket I showed you earlier. So let's say we bolt that here. As it comes up here, you're going to see a gap here. Now, they used to sell spacers with the kit, but over the years they disappear, including my kit. I don't have any spacers. So you're going to have to measure that and either pack it out with washers or build a spacer. But you don't want this to be bending one way or another under stress. It's supporting the weight of the Supercharger. I'm going to go ahead and put it on. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Snug this bolt, then you're going to measure this gap here. This is pretty bendy, and again, it's not really imperative that it doesn't fit absolutely perfect. You don't need to mic a piece and machine anything to fit in here. Like I said, washers will do, long as everything tightens up. You're going to make sure your bolt is going to fit through here, and you're going to use something to fill this space so that when you tighten this down, it bottoms out. But again, this triangulates the whole kit. Super important that we don't break the manifold. Alright, so episode 5, we're going to get into the front suspension. Same thing as the back. Pull it all apart, refinish it, repaint it, make it look nicer. Get into the brakes. The front brake calipers look a little questionable. I'll show you a little bit more on those. And then, of course, get the engine installed back in the car and then start hooking everything up. Trying to find out what else we need. I'm sure there's going to be odds and ends that we come across. But thanks for watching. Hopefully you're enjoying the episode. Don't forget, hit the subscribe, hit the like, and we'll try and share as much as we can with you. Hopefully enjoying the series, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, enjoy your cars and enjoy your builds.